Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. So I did a voiceover I was going to lead with. One of my viewers was commenting, uh, telling me that not all Christians are bad, and I was, no, I never said that, and don't think that, right? So um, today is, I think, the 2nd of October. Yeah. So which was a weird thing. I addressed that and some other things in the comment section in a voiceover that's going to open the video with. But then I saw this bombshell. You know, Candace Owens can be annoying. I mean, she's the way that she expresses herself. I think a lot of people, it's off-putting, right? I don't know if she has like a California accent. I don't know what it is. She's taken acting class. I don't know what it is that she does. In the same way Erica Kirk. FYI, sometimes I call Erica Monica. It's I don't know why this happens, but it's been happening without me being aware of it. Um, And, as my wife just told me this morning, which I heard her say, she said the only people that can get me to stop are my husband, who is worth $180 million. He's a blonde English dude. I forget how he made his money, but he's got a lot of it. $180 million worth. Um, almost turning point money. But, and Erica Kirk. And apparently, my wife said somebody said that Erica has just recently followed Candace on Instagram. So she's in favor of what Candace is saying. But Erica Kirk is, the worst. So there's all that, right? And I don't get into it because I don't care. I'm not going down the rabbit hole. None of these people, I say this about anybody they give a microphone, that they're owned in some way. And it's easy to own people because you can bribe them and you can threaten them and you can show them that anything they do will not end in the overthrow of the evils that you perceive in the government and anything else, right? Because, as I said before, the whole system is demonic. You can't make something demonic change. The battle that was waged was lost years ago. When our ancestors gave up their skills. When you don't have an option. So this is it. Aside from the, you know, the how the system is need. I've talked about how the system needs evil. It feeds off of evil. Like it can't survive with righteousness and godliness. And if everyone was turned into a saint, the system would collapse because it's like some kind of, it's got like a hold on people. It's like it possesses people. The system possesses people. Everyone has like some kind of things that they couldn't give up that the system provides for them. Everybody has some addictions or just some needs that the system provides for them, and they don't have the skills to go and live some other way. You're going to go out in the woods and live without electricity and water, hot water and running water. You have those skills. You're going to go live in fucking off the grid somewhere and fucking try to homestead. I mean, I've homesteaded now I milked my first cow like 20 years ago. And we got chickens 20 years ago. And, on and off, I was doing that for years. I milked a cow for 6, 7 years and made cheese and, all the things, kefir and all the things that we did as a family. And, now I have a homestead now and I'm working on it regularly. I, have a basic knowledge of operating. I can run a tractor. Which I couldn't do before because we'd have that stuff. I use a scythe, all these kind of things, right? Things that are old school tools. I did a homestead without power equipment and with power equipment. And, planting trees, building a food forest now. All these different things that I've learned how to do, right? As a homesteader. And I'm nowhere close to doing it where it could be, a self-sufficient type situation. And as an older person, it gets harder and harder to adapt and just the physical output you need, right? Because we're dependent on this system. We're dependent on a demonic system. Like that's probably no one else will tell you that, right? And you can't do anything about it. And when it collapses, you need community, and most people can't get along with anybody. And I'm when I'm on the top of the list of having difficulty get along with people for various reasons. Like you need community, and you have to work with other people, which I don't do very well. Some people great at networking, having that ability, but I don't, right? So that's where we're at, and so the system already owns you because you're dependent on it, right? And so I don't, whatever. So the people themselves and what's going to happen next, but it's certainly God's will that this demonic system go down. Like those are the things I'm sure of, right? That we're 100% or we're whatever percentage we're dependent on this system, that we can't live without certain things. And you only have to be dependent on one or two things for it to have a hold on you, right? But we're dependent on a lot of people are addicted to certain things that the system provides. And so when the people come to you that control the system and give you this reality that, that you can't fix the system, so you're going to sell out. So people who are in front of the microphone are going to sell out. It's not even they have to threaten their families or any other things. They have to tell you, if you keep on going like this, the best you can do is destroy the system. The best that the truth community could do is destroy the system. You can't fix it, right? It's impossible to fix. It's impossible to make it something that's demonic. It's impossible to, like a system, like you can do this with a person. A demonic person can flip a switch and become a saint, or at least be on the pathway to sainthood, right? Because, they have future lives and you can change, right? You can change, and a person can choose to change, and, it takes some effort, and you have to clean yourself out. You have to get rid of the, addictive tendencies and the depravity within your system. But you can all of a sudden say, I want to do this and get inspired to be one with God. Like that can happen. St. Paul, like somebody who was killing Christians, had a divine revelation, right? That's an example of something like that. Someone who was doing demonic work. People themselves can change. But a whole system that's demonic can't. Because the things that would make the system divine would make the system implode, right? You can't have a debt-based system for a debt-based economic system for a divine overall system, right? You can't have it. You can't have, these things are, that you can't, there's nothing you can do about that, right? So the system has to collapse and people have to build a new one. So that's just what's waiting for all of us, right? So I don't, in terms of judging people or not liking people, but I can say one of the things that the Christians own, and I'm talking about not every Christian, but certainly not Christ, the evangelical Christians, is the support of Israel. And Benjamin Netanyahu fucking just, I've never heard such a blatantly dickish comments from him, from anybody. Even Trump hasn't gotten this, was this arrogant, right? And Candace Owens, to her credit in this thing I call the show, she's definitely bringing it, right? So, I wasn't even going to list this video because it didn't seem to have anything about Turning Point, but I was, cooking dinner, whatever I was doing, and I was cooking dinner, and I turned it to I went and forwarded it to the thing that talked about Netanyahu, and he has these comments here that are here. Let's watch it.
What can I say, you guys? The world is very clearly changing, and it is changing fast. Okay? 2 years ago, the mere idea that you might share a perspective that Jews are controlling the media, that would be considered anti-Semitic. You would be called a Jew hater. Fast forward to 2025, and Bibi Netanyahu is now hosting an on-camera meeting with American social media influencers to talk about how they are going to shape U.S. opinion. I honestly, with my eyes, I was going, this can't be real. They're not even hiding it anymore, right? It's first it was a conspiracy theory. Now it's here's what we're going to do. Okay. And what are we going to do? How are we going to beat out all of these independent voices who are winning because they're telling the truth? So Deborah Lee asked Bibi Netanyahu specifically about Charlie Kirk's assassination and the potential loss of evangelical support for the state of Israel because of it, which, by the way, is going to be the consequence of this. It will be the consequence of this because they lied after he died, and it pissed me off. Okay? Take a listen to what Deborah asks.
So something I would like to raise, which was actually my first published paper, was how you and the Likud party are cut from the same ideological cloth as Trump and the GOP in America. And so specifically with Charlie Kirk's assassination, who was a big mentor of mine, he's my first mentor in the space, evangelicals, from all my research, evangelicals are the reason that Israel has been supported in public sphere outside of just Jews. So with Charlie's assassination and with the kind of trajectory that we see with like Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson, I guess I'm curious about what's another game plan if we lose evangelical support for the state of Israel? What's our backup plan?
So I'm not sure what this says. Something general of Israel. And it says New York. They're in New York, I guess. But they give them a playbook. Right?
Strong, like outside of the diaspora.
Okay. First off, I don't know why it's always me and Tucker Carlson. Why? Why is it always Tucker Carlson and Cameron Owens? Like, can it be anybody else? It's all like, what? We have nothing to do with one another. I've been on his show twice on his independent show. I just love Tucker. I do. I'm a fan. I'm not going to lie. But I feel like they're starting to think we're the same person. Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens. Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens over and over again. But listen to Bibi's response because prepare yourself. What he is saying is that they are about to launch a psychological war on Americans. Take a listen to what he says.
Okay. I'm going to play this whole thing without interrupting, and then I want to go back and do it, play it again, because it is completely fucked what he says. Like, this is just, like I said, I almost didn't listen to this, right? Because, this battle between Candace Owens and Turning Point is kind of the only thing I'm interested in. She's covering a lot of the details of, Tyler Robinson, and I guess there's a woman involved in the thing now, and I have no interest in it. The details, I already know the whole thing's fucked and faked and all this stuff. Whatever it is, it's a, operation. It's an operation that I believe that she's part of in some way. But this guy, here it is.
Christian influencers, okay? You said, we talked about the woke right, and you said, I call it the woke Reich. That's a brilliant observation. The woke Reich, because these people, they're not any different from the woke left. They're insane, they're beliefs. But they're actually meeting on some of the things. And what we have to do is we have to secure that part of the base of our support in the United States. That is being challenged systematically. A lot of this is done with money. Money of NGOs, vast. Money of governments, vaster. Okay? We have to fight back. How do we fight back? Our influencers. I think you should also talk to them if you have a chance. To that community, they're very important. And secondly, we're going to have to use the tools of battle. The weapons change over time. You can't fight today with swords. That doesn't work very well, okay? And you can't fight with cavalry. That doesn't work very well. And you have these new things, like drones, things like that. I won't get into that. But we have to fight with the weapons that apply to the battlefields in which we're engaged. And the most important ones are the social media. And the most important purchase that is going on right now is followers. TikTok. TikTok, number one. And I hope it goes through because it can be consequential. And the other one, what's the other one that's most important? X. Exactly. Very good. And, so we have to talk to Elon. He's not an enemy. He's a friend. We should talk to him. Now, if we can get those two things, we get a lot, and I could go on other things, but that's not the point right now. We have to fight the fight, okay? To give direction to the Jewish people and give direction to our non-Jewish friends or those who could be our friends. Are we going to succeed with everyone? No. Will there be a strong counterpart? Yes.
Okay, so let's go back to that again here at the beginning. Right here, I think it starts. So, That's completely fucked. Let's go through it. Let me comment on it here.
Christian influencers. Okay. You said, we talked about the woke right. And you said, I call it the woke Reich. That's a brilliant observation. The woke Reich, because these people, they're not any different from the woke left. I mean, they're insane.
So, he's saying that they're all Nazis. He's saying that every person that criticizes Israel is a Nazi, right? The Third Reich. So like this is all the people. Like there's no sense that Israel you can criticize Israel and be, anything that is a criticism of Israel, you're a Nazi. I mean, that's so fucked right there. Right? So he's got these people. Remember, this happened where other truthers were being asked to take money from Israel. They were being offered money from Israel. We know that Charlie Shekels Kirk, was getting, bankrolled by these Friends of Israel people, and so it, as a way to hide the money where it's coming from. But, this was happening within the truth community, and then online influencers were taking money to promote a genocide. And there was this blonde girl, I forget her name, I'd pull up her Instagram, but I covered her, and she was just, brutal. And it's not just the genocide, it's the fact that they're 100% in the wrong. Like almost every country now, but America is like, Jesus Christ, you guys are like what they're doing with the Palestinians. It's a land grab. I said it first thing, and I'm not some expert on this, and I haven't really covered Israel over the years for, all the people that hate Jews. I didn't want them on my channel, right? Like you start covering things and people think that you agree with them. And then you get all these people, and they were the worst people. Like they were, they were haters, right? But, they were right about certain things in terms of what Israel's doing. And the narratives that are out there in the truth community, there's people who blame the Jews for everything, right? The Jews, this idea. And there's plenty of good people in Israel who are against what's happening with the Palestinians. They're looking on in horror. And Jewish people in America. There's, they're not 100% behind this guy. Like this guy's the Trump of his country. And he's hated by the left-wing part of their country, which just doesn't have enough support to get rid of him. And, because they're in a shitty situation there, where they're surrounded by enemies that they've had for 3,000 years, who have their own fucking issues with. It isn't like the Muslim people are, like it's, they don't get along with anybody either, right? They're, where the countries they're in, and they don't get along with each other. They're at war with the Shiite and the Sunni and brutal war. So, it's a bunch of hotheads out there, who've had a 3,000-year beef and this whole thing. But he just compared anybody who gives the slightest bit of criticism to Israel as being a part of the Third Reich. I call it the Third Reich. So if you criticize Israel, you're a Nazi. And you know what happens to Nazis, right? You know how what the world deals with Nazis. And so then you have to go to war with these Nazis. Like that's his next thing. First, he's identified anybody criticizing Israel as a Nazi. This is so fucked. And it's, it's very typical of the victim consciousness bullshit that this guy particularly, this unlikable fuck, right?
But they're actually meeting on some of the things. And what we have to do is we have to secure that part of the base of our support in the United States. That is being challenged systematically. A lot of this is done with money. Money of NGOs, vast. Money of governments, vaster. Okay? We have to fight back. How do we fight back? Our influencers. I think you should also talk to them if you have a chance.
Okay, so you gotta, that this war is happening, that there's these companies and NGOs that are spreading the hate of Israel, right? The hate towards Jewish people in Israel. Not the fact that you're doing a genocide right in front of people, that you've murdered maybe up to 600,000 people, you have an asset in Hamas, and you want to grab that land. You've grabbed almost all of Palestine, and use victim consciousness and false flag attacks and a manipulation that smart people can see through to do your evil, right? To grab your land that you think is promised you biblically, and that the Palestinian people are just, goy that are there to be slaughtered, people that have no army, people that have no air force or military. When this first happened, I documented the difference between what Israel has. They have the 21st most powerful army in the world, a small country, people, whatever it is, a couple million people there, less than that. There's 2 million Palestinians in Gaza. So the majority of people in the Palestinian Gaza Israel area, the Palestinian Israel area, country, are Muslim Palestinian people. They make up the majority of that area. And with the small amount of people and, the support they get from the American government, buying every politician they can and getting rid of every politician that goes against them, they have secured, unconditional support from the greatest friend that Israel has ever had in the White House, and Trump, who says they can do whatever, planning to have a fucking party in Gaza and build a luxury resort after committing a genocide right in front of people. It's an evil act. It's just fucking evil. And when you do something this evil and the people can see it and you have social media and the kids are growing up seeing it and you just keep on doing it and making excuses and just, bullshitting your way through it and using victim consciousness and claiming how you're always the victim and somehow everyone who hates you is wrong and is just a Third Reich Nazi, right? And then you got these kids here you're paying off and trying to indoctrinate to support you, who are going to run into a buzzsaw there's an eruption of these things. It's hard to understand why he's doing this, right? I mean, the world is against him. And as soon as Trump is out, which is, 2 years, the Congress is going to hold him accountable. He's going to get rolled in the midterms. Candace Owens is even going to take a shot at Trump for allowing this, right? Like this is, and we know that Jeffrey Epstein had ties to him. But so that's like the first part, right? He's identifying anybody. So this is what happened to Charlie Kirk, and whatever was real about Charlie Kirk, whatever, he was, you have to reconcile. If you think everybody's an actor, then why did Charlie Kirk appear to be hurt? And why would he be going against Israel, right? Like, I believe that Charlie Kirk is an operative because all these people are bought and sold. Charlie Kirk was receiving money from Israel. But why would he say things? Why would he ask for an audit? And why would he be hedging his opinion about Israel, right? I mean, it wasn't because of his conscience and that he was worried about the Palestinian children. It was about his losing support. And then these other people that he was kind of linked to all taking this turn, right? Megyn Kelly, Candace Owens, and Candace Owens, the former partner, was kicked out of Turning Point because she started to call out a genocide, right? So, they are owned and they are, operatives, but they're human beings that have human reactions. And his reaction was to question Israel. And now we know what he does with this. He calls it a war right here.
That community, they're very important. And secondly, we're going to have to use the tools of battle. The weapons change over time. You can't fight today with swords. That doesn't work very well, okay? And you can't fight with cavalry. That doesn't work very well. And you have these new things, like drones, things like that. I won't get into that.
So if he just kind of, in a sense, admitted, in a way, to Charlie Kirk's murder, because he first identified anybody who criticized Israel as a part of the Third Reich, right? I call them the woke right. I call them the Third Reich, the woke Reich. And so he identified them as Nazis, right? So if you criticize Israel, you're Nazis. And the number one thing, what do they always say? Israel has the right to protect itself. And to protect itself, they need American support, right? They can't do it without America. They've pretty much, most of the countries in that region just out and out hate them, like, you know, the Muslim people. And there's lots of anti-Zionist stuff out there on the internet, the truth community, and from country to country, you know, from countries like Turkey to you know, countries in the European countries. And so Israel is an unpopular country. And the UN, they battle with the UN because, you know, they want special treatment. And, you know, when you believe you're the chosen people, then that's part of your belief system, that you're God's chosen people, which that doesn't happen. And the God that they worship isn't really God. It's a demon. You know, I've talked about that in the Old Testament. The way that God behaves, it's not anything like the real God, right? What God would be. You know, a real connection with the divine essence of God is nothing like what they describe in the Old Testament. It's a narcissistic, sociopathic prick that they worship, right? That they have there. So that's another factor in this whole thing, which you won't get from other people. They won't admit to this. But read the Old Testament and see what, you know, the God who has Abraham is this like key guy. And Abraham has one miracle son. The other one was, you know, he banged his maid, right? So Abraham's banged his maid, impregnated her slave, right? His slave, that's, you know. And she has his baby, and his baby is it Ishmael is going to be his heir. But then I think her name's Rebecca, is it Rachel? Rachel maybe is. And all of a sudden his older wife, who can't get pregnant, gets pregnant with Isaac. And Isaac is his chosen son, is, you know, from his wife, and he's, you know, fuck Ishmael now. He's fucked. And Hagar, I think is the name of his slave. And so this, you know, slavery and maids and this time thing, you know, just, I mean, totally like, you know, I mean, it's like form of rape, basically. You know, forced in pregnancy, like to, you know, all right, my wife can't get pregnant, so I'll bang one of these slaves, right? So this, you know, this is biblical bullshit, right? And God tells him to bring Isaac up to the mountaintop and says, you got to kill your son. Because he's testing him, because God is not God, it's a demon. Like demons test people. God doesn't test you. God isn't petty. God doesn't have narcissistic. God allows you to worship God or not, or to believe in God or not. You're completely allowed to, you know, God does not use force. God does not use manipulation. Then he goes like, just joking, I was testing you, but you got to kill something. So I created a lamb. I brought this lamb up to the mountain with you. And then instead of killing your son, kill that, because you have to sacrifice something to me. And God does not waste. God is, you know, that's one of the great things about Sagemark's system. The third master of the system talked about how one of the definitions of morality is the proper utilization of resources. That can being a true conservative, that you don't waste things, right? You don't waste resources like we waste so much stuff in America, like we waste food, we waste all kinds of things. We have this huge, you know, places that we dump our trash. You know, there's 10 or 15 years ago, there was a barge full of trash in New York City that didn't have anywhere to dump it, right? Like these landfills fill up. Giant landfills, often really nice parts of the country are filled up with trash, right? They don't have anywhere else to put it because we've been making garbage for years, wasting things, you know. It's just, you know, in a way that's it's sinful, you know, it's immoral. And so God doesn't waste things. God doesn't create things to be sacrificed to God. That's fucking stupid. Like only morons would believe that shit, right? Only dumb fucks would believe that shit. That's what I'm talking about when I get into this. And so, you know, he's going into this whole thing with this idea that anybody who criticizes them is an enemy, and then they have to go to war. And so what did Charlie Kirk do, right? Charlie Kirk was starting to criticize him. Again, maybe it's all part of a show, whatever it is, like it's hard to say what's real, what's not, what's scripted and what's not. I mean, I don't even know why this guy would be doing this. Coming to New York City while he's committing a genocide in the Middle East and the stuff. Well, I guess he was here for his horrible. I never got to cover his UN speech, but I watched a little bit of it, and it was horrific, and the UN is against him. Like these countries were all walking out on him. Like he goes and speak, and all these countries walk out on him, and the European countries are turning on him, and like all he has is these dopey evangelicals, like Charlie Kirk, who believes in the biblical rights that Israel has the promised land, and whatever they do to the Palestinian people is completely okay. That the goal Charlie Kirk was a Zionist, right? But then he started to waver a little bit on his beliefs of support of Israel, and now he's dead, right? He came out and said this, according to Candace Owens, that he was going to bring her back. This was her last video. He was going to bring her back, and he told all these people he was no longer going to support Israel. And then he gets a bullet in the neck, as she said, right? And so, like, he's just coming out and say, we own you. This is, you guys don't have you can never criticize us, right? It's one of the sayings that's been around for years. If you don't, you know who your owners are by the people you can't criticize, right? And so you know that if you criticize Israel, you're considered a Nazi. That's how it's defined. And they have plenty of shills out there. They have Fox News, and they have, all these resources. They have all these politicians that support that worldview, right?
We have to fight with the weapons that apply to the battlefields in which we're engaged. And the most important ones are the social media. And the most important purchase that is going on right now is
Followers.
TikTok. TikTok, number one.
Number one. Look at him look here, right? So we now know that, well, here's the thing here. The juice box emoji is now banned on TikTok. First the fire extinguisher emoji, and now the juice box emoji. Which emoji is next? Getting banned for posting a juice box emoji is crazy. What stage of free speech and democracy is this? LMANO. Laughing my ass off. Since Jewish billionaires took control of TikTok, the juice box officially is banned. Now, I didn't know the juice box emoji was a thing. Like, this is my wife sent it to me yesterday, before this came out with Candace Owens, right? So, TikTok is going from being owned by the Chinese to being owned by Jewish billionaires, which they are now going to censor anybody who criticizes Israel. So that is no longer a platform you can do it. And he is hinting that they own Elon Musk. The Elon Musk is, of course he is going to back their bullshit as well. So Elon Musk is going to censor these people as well. So what they're going to do is pressure YouTube, right, and Facebook. Facebook is already owned by a Jewish guy, Meta, Mark Zuckerberg. And so what they're going to do is try to erase people from these platforms, right? Deplatform people. A foreign fucking government, a foreign, a parasite that's sucking off the wealth of the American government and the American people, the taxpayers, the money that they're getting from America and using it to silence us, to get rid of our freedom of speech. This fucking piece of shit is saying that he has the, you guys should go to war and get rid of your freedom of speech so we can commit our genocide, take your money, and, destroy your reputation in the process. I mean, not that America needs help with that, right? Not that America needs help with the fucking, especially now that with Trump and Biden and with all the presidents we've had, right? But they are censoring American people. And so, that ain't going to go over well, bro, right? Like, that is a fucking nightmare. Like, this is, you just up the ante. Like, by coming in and saying this shit, like, Americans aren't going to fucking, this is a bad thing. And this is brought to you by the evangelicals, right? The evangelicals got to wake the fuck up to your bullshit. You should rip the Old Testament out of your fucking Bibles. It's a bullshit book with all this bullshit in it, right? The cutting off of foreskins and all this stuff that's weird shit, right? All the weird shit that's in there. And that this, the idea that Israel's promised this land is just it's not God that they worship. I mean, it's, you know, God, the pure God, God in God's purest form, we don't want any part of. Human beings don't want any part of God in God's purest form. And so we have to, you know, they had to appeal to people. You know, what was in the past, 2,000 years ago, when Jesus was around, or before that, what was the epitome of evolution, of power, of celebrity? And it was kings, right? So that's why they call Jesus the King of Kings. A king is not a good thing. This idea of royal people that have a bloodline that's somehow superior to other people, and they rule because of their bloodline, and they grow up in wealth and privilege, and they're, you know, mentally ill after 2 generations. You know, the first king's a brutal warrior. You know, the other thing is God is powerful. God is a warrior. That's why they would have these statues of God as a warrior. And so, you know, because people were primitive, and that's what they knew as, oh yeah, this is what we look up to. This is what we worship, right? This kind of, you know, the kind of structure of civilization, warriors and kings, and the warrior king, they were the top of the evolutionary pyramid, the top of the evolutionary aspect of the social system. And so they compared God to a king or a warrior sits on a throne. And that's bullshit, stupid. Get rid of that. That's not what God is. God doesn't have a body. God doesn't have a mind. God doesn't have an ego. God is the essence of love. And God doesn't care about life or death. Doesn't care about any of these things, right? Worlds being destroyed, worlds being created. It just all goes with the flow. Everything goes in its appropriate direction, right? God is the essence of love, the media, the force, the energy that everything, not the force, but the energy that is responsible for the creation of everything, right? And so God doesn't have opinions. God doesn't see good or bad or light or darkness. Everything has its place in the universe. And human beings can't even comprehend that. You know, we can't comprehend, you know, the vast aspect of God in the divine ways, because we have egos and we have preferences. We do have the idea of good and bad. We have the idea of good and evil. Good and evil do not exist in God. Dualities do not exist in God. God is one thing. God is the essence of love. And so all the other, you know, the way that people put form and substance to God is, you know, is not correct, right? So anyways, there's that. So they're getting rid of the juice box. So this is something I've been saying for years. Have you ever wondered why ISIS never attacked Israel? Because ISIS really didn't even attack America. Barely. ISIS was always an American asset. And America gave ISIS an oil field in Iraq to fund them. And they have been an American asset, just like Hamas is an Israeli asset, right? I mean, ISIS is Jew-hating, Israel-hating Muslims, and they only attack other countries, right? Like, look at the countries. This is great. This is Syria, Libya, Egypt, Yemen. Why are they never attacking Israel? I mean, look at the sky. It's a great beam. He's trying to shoot arrows at Israel, and he's hitting all these other places. Why, you know, why Sri Lanka, right? Like, just, I mean, it's bizarre. Meet Charlie Kirk's replacement. That kid, it looks like that kid that I showed you the other day. So there's that, right? So let's get back to Candace Owens. But so like the TikTok thing is, you know, let's go back to the Bibi Netanyahu here.
States that is being challenged systematically. A lot of this is done with money. Money of NGOs, vast. Money of governments, vaster. Okay? We have to fight back. How do we fight back? Our influencers. I think you should also...
Our influencers, right? American citizens who are paying off to do propaganda. This guy's just launching a propaganda campaign right in fucking New York City. Right in the fucking, you know, arrogance of how much he thinks he owns Americans, American media, and American whatever it is. That he can just walk into American city, New York City, and say, you know, of course, New York, and say, we're launching a propaganda campaign. We have all of our influencers who we're paying, by the way. We have to pay them with your taxpayer money. We take your taxpayer dollars, the billions of dollars we get every year just in welfare from America, and then we pay it back to certain politicians and Charlie Kirk and pieces of shit like that, and all you guys. We take our shekels. We take your dollars and turn them into shekels, and we pay you guys up your shekels so you can betray your own country and do the bidding of Israel. Like, we have traitors in your country, every politician, every media network, who are working against American interests and on behalf of Israel. He's just fucking come out and saying it. All the things that people have been saying for years and were called, like Candace Owens was saying, called anti-Semitic, called, Nazis. If you suggested that the Israeli government had an influence over the media and all these other things, and he's just fucking cold admitting it, and not only just that he has influencers.
Talk to them if you have a chance. To that community, they're very important. And secondly, we're going to have to use the tools of battle. The
way he says that in a smile with a smile. Like, we have your money, we got all your fucking billions that we can use, and all the influence we've bought with it, and now we own the tools of battle, right? We own the battlefield.
Weapons change over time. You can't fight today with swords. That doesn't work very well. Okay, and you can't fight with cavalry. That doesn't work very well. And you have these new things, like drones, things like that. I won't get into that, but we have to fight with the weapons that apply to the battlefields in which we're engaged. And the most important ones are the social media. And the most important purchase that is going on right now is followers. TikTok. TikTok. Number one.
Look at how happy he is. He knows, like, they own platforms. They not only have paid for influencers, but he owns platforms. They own fucking platforms, the social media platforms. So they decide what you can say and what you can't say, and they're going to destroy all this, freedom of speech. I mean, who needs that when you have this great leader, and Trump is a taint kisser, kissing this guy's taint, and so buying platforms, right?
And I hope it goes through because it can be consequential. And the other one, what's the other one? That's most important. X. X. Exactly. Very good. And so we have to talk to Elon. He's not an enemy. He's a friend. We should talk to him.
And so what's he going to talk to him about? Censorship. Elon's supposed to be against censorship. He's going to say, you got to censor, because that's the only thing you could talk to him about, and you got to promote all this fucking Israel propaganda. So he's launching a propaganda campaign with American dollars, coming in right New York City and saying it, and saying, if you criticize Israel, you're a Nazi, and all the social media companies, especially the ones we own now, TikTok and the other ones, are going to be all about that. So all the TikTok videos, all the young people that go on TikTok, all the college students that go on TikTok that are pro-Palestinian, you won't be able to say shit, and you'll be called a Nazi if you do so, right? So this is what he's fucking doing with this thing.
We can get those two things, we get a lot, and I could go on other things, but that's not the point right now. We have to fight the fight, okay? To give direction to the Jewish people and give direction to our non-Jewish friends, or those who could be our our friends. Are we going to succeed with everyone? No. Will there be a strong counterpoint? Yes.
Okay, so like we're allowed to say Israel controls the media now. Okay, I think that's just like on camera now. There will be no dispute about this. The fact that you have a foreign leader, it's incredible. You have a foreign leader who is sitting up there saying that he wants his agents, he needs the deal to go through, which, by the way, let's call out Donald Trump right now. Okay, all of the acting. We don't want China. We don't want China to own TikTok, and I'm worried about your data. No, you wanted to hand it over to your Zionist friends. Okay, it was all a mirage.
Your Zionist leader, your Zionist owner, they own Donald Trump, right? The greatest friend Israel has ever had in the White House. They own the fucking guy, right? Donald Trump should have Israel, or like I used to talk about how the mainstream media should have like if you were watching CNN, that there would be like, outside of Anderson Cooper's mouth, there would be a dildo written with Pfizer on it. But now Fox News, because I turned on Fox News the other day, and I think it was the morning show or Jesse Waters, one of those two things. And they were talking about some kind of new deal. And they were like, our friends at Pfizer. They said Pfizer like 4 times. Like, for our friends at Pfizer, this stuff. RFK Jr. was good friends with Roger Ailes. They went on some kind of like camping trip thing when they were young. Roger Ailes, who used to be in charge of Fox News. And Fox News kept on bringing RFK Jr. on to Fox News because they were friends, right? Even though he was a liberal Democrat. But they agreed on some things. And he had a piece he was going to do on Big Pharma. And Roger Ailes was going to let him run it. And Rupert Murdoch said, no way, we will lose our pharmaceutical supporters. That's every one of these, the same thing, right? They own the media. Like they have bought and sold these people and their whole thing. And Donald Trump should have a dildo with Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu written on it, right? Outside his mouth every time he opens it and starts talking about this shit. Because he's completely owned, right? He's servicing Israel. Like he's a taint licker.
Gosh. Okay, it was all theater. Donald Trump has sold us out to Israel once again. Okay? So he's saying, I want this deal to go through. And we know who's a part of that deal. It's Larry Ellison, who is...
All right, so she's going to get into all that kind of bullshit that's not necessary to know. But this fucking happened, right? So I have this voiceover about evangelical Christians. And that's not about that at all. It's about how somebody was saying that I don't like Christians or I'm prejudiced against them. Or it's none of these things, right? The evangelical Christians and their bullshit belief that Israel somehow has a claim. This is Charlie Kirk saying that I believe in the biblical land rights. This kind of thing where God promised this land to Israel. And it's bullshit because anybody can say, you can write a book saying God promised me this. God promised me Israel, right? I wrote, the Bible according to Pauli, right? Anybody can say that. You can just say fucking, any group can say this is, we're the chosen people. God said so. Oh yeah, did he? Everyone can talk to God. Everyone can communicate with God. Everyone's chosen by God. There's no chosen ones. The chosen ones is a silly idea that doesn't exist, right? And so, these people aren't blessed by God. Otherwise, this stuff wouldn't be happening all the fucking time, right? Were they blessed by God during the Holocaust, right? This kind of thing. During the Exodus. I mean, in the Bible, they're just going. Moses is just walking through the desert, and he's getting punished by God left and right. The God of the Old Testament. It's just all bullshit. And so it's, the bullshit stuff in the Bible has led these evangelical Christians to give a blank check to Israel. And if that support disappeared, Israel would fold. And this guy's coming in here and he's going to take away your freedom of fucking speech. He's going to come in and take your freedom of speech away because he owns these motherfuckers, right? He owns them through their bullshit biblical beliefs and through his taking American taxpayer dollars and turning it into shekels to give to the politicians, and then Jeffrey Epstein getting shit on Trump or whatever reason that Trump is completely owned by Israel, right? And so this is where we're at right now. And the whole thing with Charlie Kirk, he was Charlie Shekels Kirk, right? This whole thing, and then he somehow was turning his opinion, and now he's dead, or not, whatever he is. But this is all actors. Like this is just what it is. Like whatever you think it is, right? I mean, it's not whatever you think it is. You have your opinion about it, but it's happening right now. Like this is affecting you because you will not be able to say things on social media, and they're already getting rid of the stuff on college campuses. That they are taking a strong arm and saying you guys no longer have freedom of speech. Benjamin Netanyahu, and he's basically confessing to Charlie's murder in the show because Charlie Kirk was becoming the whatever you call the far Reich, the far Reich, the far right, the far Reich, the woke Reich, and so whatever Netanyahu called this thing in the beginning, he's referring to him as a Nazi, because anybody who would dare question Israel is a Nazi. The whole world's a Nazi, right? The UN's a Nazi. The NGOs are Nazis. like everybody's a Nazi, right? Like everybody but people who lick his taint are Nazis. You know, everyone else is a fucking Nazi. Only the taint lickers, only the people who say that everything that Israel does is great and Israel can commit a genocide. The Palestinians, they're Nazis. All the other countries around, all the Arabs, they're Nazis, right? I mean, maybe it's not everyone else, right? maybe it's you, right? Maybe it's you that's the problem. Maybe it's not everybody else in the world that's the fucking problem. Maybe it's not everyone else in the world, the people that you have bought and sold, or you're blackmailing or bribing, that you have to get somebody like Jeffrey Epstein to prostitute young girls to powerful people so you can control and own them. That you have to get some guy, producers of movies like the guy who made the Fight Club movie, to be a spy and take governmental secrets and then run back to Israel as a dual citizen. Or maybe the people that stole the information about America's nuclear program so that you guys could have nuclear bombs. But Iran can't have them, but you can have them because you're so fucking trustworthy. Or maybe it's the time you bombed the U.S. Liberty because they were about to find out that you were the ones that were starting the Six-Day War, that you were the aggressors. So you bombed an American information ship, trying to blame it in a false flag way, but you didn't sink it. And those guys were treated like, instead of heroes, they were treated like villains. Because LBJ, Lyndon Baines Johnson, after, you guys killed JFK, who was against Israel, right? And so Lyndon Baines Johnson was scared shitless. Maybe that's why, right? Maybe that's all the things that's the reason people don't like you. It's not anything to do with any of these other things. It's not that they're Nazis. It's not that, they're hateful people, the whole rest of the world. It's because the way Israel's behaved, right? The Zionists have behaved. Anyways, let me go to the voiceover here. Okay, so I missed something here. It's really important. I heard it the first time I watched it, and it stuck out to me. And then I got distracted by some. I mean, it's so like it's so bad, right? But listen to this part right here. Again, I want to point this out I got to do a little voiceover before doing my voiceover I did last night.
Christian influencers, okay? You said, we talked about the woke right, and you said, I call it the woke Reich. That's a brilliant observation. The woke Reich, because these people, they're not any different from the woke left. I mean, they're insane.
They're insane. They're insane. If you criticize Israel, you're insane. If you criticize Israel, you are insane. Right? They're no different than the woke left. It's the woke Reich. You're a Nazi and you're insane. And so if you're a Nazi and you're insane, what has to happen? They have to kill you, right? If you dare to criticize Israel, you are insane Nazi. You are an insane Nazi to criticize Israel. That's what he's saying here, right? And so Charlie Kirk was beginning to criticize Israel, was beginning to break ties with Israel. So what happened to him, right? So like this is like, as much as you're going to get as a confession out of these motherfuckers when they tell you what they're really about. If you criticize Israel at all, because Israel is fucking perfect, only crazy people, only insane people criticize Israel. And what do you do with those kind of insane people who are also Nazis? You got to silence them. You got to lock them up. You can't give them a voice. Kill them, right? You have to go to war with those insane Nazis. Look at the whole world's full of insane Nazis. How many insane Nazis are there in the world? Well, everybody who criticizes Israel, well, what percentage of the population does that? I don't know. 60%? 90%? I mean, now with the genocide, if you say Israel's doing a genocide of the Palestinian people, hey, shut up, insane Nazi. You fucking insane Nazi. Shut the fuck up. Boy, that's insane, you Nazi. I mean, I know you guys are Nazis and you're insane, but just don't stop being so insane Nazi and say such things. That the Israeli government is, would be accountable and be criticizable for killing 50,000 100,000 Palestinian children and Palestinian citizens, maybe as many as 600,000. And then all the suffering they're causing these poor people, these people without an army, using American dollars and American weapons to impose their will on these people. And their controlled opposition, Hamas, that works as an Israeli asset. No, you're insane for saying that. How crazy you are. You got to be deplatformed. You can't be fucking saying insane shit like that. You're crazy. How crazy are you? You a Nazi. Like fucking... All right, so let me move over to voiceover here. So before I get to my voiceovers, I wanted to show you this. This is the part where this is not the part. This is the thing where he talks about believing in the biblical land rights of Israel, right? And how much of a supporter of Israel he was. And this is what he had to say.
Like, hey, are you doing this? Is it smart or is it dumb? But no, I am a bad person.
Wait, actually go back here a second here.
You're not allowed to, though. No, you're not allowed to. It's even worse than that. Again, I just want to repeat for the 5th time. I love Israel. I want Israel to win. But my moral character is now being put into question, Megan. Not my decisions. Not like, hey, are you doing this? Is it smart or is it dumb? But no, I am a bad person if I do this. And I could go. I mean, you saw it, Megan. It was trending.
I am a bad person. No, you're not a bad person, Charlie. You're a Nazi. You're a crazy Nazi. You're an insane Nazi, Charlie. I mean, you're flirting with being, before you were a friend of Israel, when you 100% shilled for them and took their shekels and shilled for them. But when you started to question even the slightest questioning of Israel's evil behavior, when you even just, contemplating even the criticism of just some of the decisions and about the war, the genocide, and these other things, you became an insane Nazi. It was like you flipped a switch. You went from Israel's #1 shill to an insane Nazi with just a blink of an eye. And now you're dead, right? So, or at least, in terms of the official story. And so that's how quickly it happens. I mean, you question Israel, and you turn into an insane Nazi. It's not your character. It's not that you're a bad person. You're an insane Nazi. Okay, so just in terms of, there has been a lot of people that would write comments on my channel about hating Jewish people. And that was always an auto ban, right? Any sort of hatred, because, it was bad for the truth community, and it certainly would be bad for my channel. And I don't believe in hatred. Like, hatred is not something like, I don't say I hate things. And I don't hate things because, the Sajmark system, if you have hate inside your system, you throw it out. Hate hurts you. You hate. The object of your hate is whatever it is, but the hate is inside of you. Like, you hate. You're hating people, you're hating this group, you're hating that group. So I don't deal with hate. No matter how bad people are, no matter how shitty they are, hatred is something that poisons you. It poisons your inner condition. I talk about this in this upcoming voiceover about the difference between spiritual condition and spiritual approach. And you have to guard your spiritual condition. And you can't let hate and anger and fear overtake your spiritual condition. You can't let them dominate your internal world, right? So hatred is something I don't deal in. And so there's a lot of Jewish hate out there that that I wouldn't allow on my channel, just like anything else. Anything else that's hateful, racist, any of these things. Because, that there's no place for that, right? And something else that's different about my my channel and what I talk about here, I have a different perspective about this, because in the divine drama, this goes back to the Mahabharata and these other things, and anything to do with Jesus. I mean, Christians can get this. If Jesus's crucifixion was the will of God, which I don't think it is, but that's what they believe, right? That it was important to the Christian religion that they could use the cross as a symbol. And they have this idea of Jesus dying for your sins, which can't happen. But if that was the case, then wasn't Judas doing God's work, right? Wasn't Judas doing God's work? If the crucifixion was a part of God's plan, even though Judas was maybe selfish, whatever Judas need to be to execute that betrayal, right? Like, being a Judas is a bad thing, but Judas was doing God's work in that divine drama. There's Krishna is the incarnation of Vishnu. And Vishnu would incarnate. Vishnu is the god or the cosmic functionary. See, there's higher developed souls that are in charge of wide scale things, right? As you work your way up the godly universe, there are positions that become open. And one of those positions is overseeing the material universe. So as you expand, as your heart expands and becomes a universal heart, and you do more and more work for God, and your capacity and your powers grow. And again, power is not to be utilized for your own desires, but only to be used when God orders you to do something. And you graduate into these positions. And for the time being, Vishnu, this soul that they call Vishnu in India, was in charge of preservation, right? There was Brahma that was in charge of creation. Shiva is in charge of destruction. And Vishnu was in charge of preservation. But there's a time where they'll graduate to something else. They'll get promoted. They'll go to a different level of consciousness. And then some other soul will fill this role. You know, I saw this in one of those, I think it was called Spirited Away. And there was a spirit of a river. And it was a, Japanese animation. Kind of interesting way to think about it. But, this exists in this Sajmark teachings. That, there's Yama, the god of death, which, people call the Grim Reaper or whatever. That there's a soul that's in charge of death. Everything that's dying, that soul can be in multiple places at once and helps with the transition from life to death, right? There's a soul in charge of that. There's a soul in charge of the sun, which I have a connection to, right? Some, past life thing. And so Vishnu would come down to Earth and incarnate as a person, and he incarnated as Rama and Krishna, and then some of these other famous souls, right? Same famous spiritual people. And there was a soul with him, and the soul didn't really want to come down to Earth. And Vishnu said, "Well, you got to come down. You can either come down 10 times as my friend, you'll be my friend in the life, or you'll be my enemy 3 times." And they say, "Well, I'll take the enemy 3 times because I want to go there," right? So the soul comes down, and its third time is a character called Shishupal, who just insults Krishna. And his Shishupal's mom loves Krishna and is a devotee of Krishna. But Shishupal is insulting, and she begs Krishna, the mom, not to kill the guy because he's just, he's his enemy, like whatever. But he's this soul, right? And so anybody that Krishna killed got liberated. And so the soul was on his third try or whatever. And he was up, and Krishna said, I'll bear 100 insults. But after that, I've got to kill him. And he was, this scene from the Mahabharata where this guy comes in, and he's like, he sees Krishna, and he comes in, and Krishna goes, "Today's your day, Shishupal." And he says, he gives him 3 insults, and Shishupal and Krishna has this disc that he pulls out, and he cuts off his head, and the soul that is actually, a part of Vishnu's team goes, back to the brighter world, right? Goes back to the etheric realm because he didn't want to be he didn't want to be on planet Earth anyway, right? But he played these roles. And so there are villains that play roles that are really higher developed souls, right? And there was this book, Conversations with God. There was some like liberal hippie, maybe some guy who doubted God. And he would ask God questions. And according to Charji, he was in connection with Babaji, who was, the third master, the second master of the Sajmark system. That Babaji was answering his questions because God is hard to communicate with because God doesn't have a mind or an ego. But there's a segment in there where the guy goes, "Well, what about bad people like Hitler?" And God responds that Hitler was a former Rishi, a higher developed soul, and that he was okay. So I was going to read you the direct quote, but Gemini wouldn't produce it for me. It said it spans several pages, and this whole thing. But the sentiment was that Hitler was doing God's work, and this idea of value judgments and good and evil and these things. And so Master Charji, the third master of the Sajmark system, was asked about this, right? He hadn't read the book, but he had heard about it. And he said, well, Hitler's soul, he used to be a rishi, he used to be a saint, a higher developed soul. He was currently an inmate. He was incarnated as an Indian inmate. They had these young guys that would come and live at the ashram, and they would get free room and board, and they would do work and hang out, and they would solidify their spiritual experience. And there's some families, like poor families of a lower caste, that got to live there, and they were put through the Lalaji Memorial Magus School, which was a highly academically accredited school that Charji had built there. And it was a private school. Many of the practitioners, the Abhyasis from all over the world, would send their kids to the school, and it was expensive. But these people, these inmates, kids could go there for free. And these kids would then elevate themselves out of their lower caste because they'd get a higher education that wouldn't be available to them otherwise. So it was, and I met some of these people, hung out with them, people that lived at the ashram. And oftentimes they were just like really saintly, just amazing people. And there was a kid there that helped my family, and I got into some difficulties when we overstayed our visa. And there was a guy, a young kid, that he was kind of assigned to us, and he was like a saint. He was like a 25-year-old kid, just a great kid. And he I got rid of my Skype account, but we used to communicate on Skype when I got back to America. And 2 years after we had left, he was like, "How you guys doing? You need anything?" Like he just, called, he Skyped me, he sent me a message on Skype or something out of the blue, and he was just, really nice kid. So they had these people called inmates, they weren't prisoners, they lived at the ashram, which is, and one of them was the soul of Hitler, right? That's what Charji said. And so, it's a different way to understand it, right? That there's, bad people and good people who play roles for God, play role for some divine drama. So, you don't necessarily know what's going on. That's why I say, Trump is doing God's work, and you could say Netanyahu is doing God's work, and, Xi Jinping or whatever his name from China is doing God's work. These different people, right? The guy from Russia, Putin, he's doing God's work because the system has to come down. It's God's will that the system gets collapsed. And so that's, something different that I say here. Like, I don't get into good and evil because I don't know, what role somebody's playing for God and what commitment their soul has to play that role. Like, they're on a soul level. Trump, on a human level, Trump's just a pig and a piece of shit. A gross, disgusting pig. Like, on a human level. But his soul is doing God's work. So I don't know, how much of that is Trump a demon who is doing God's work, just by being a demon, or is he a higher developed soul that's doing God's work? But either way, God's will is for the system to come down because there's no other reason for it. In fact, I made a video entitled, "Why would God save this system? Why would God save America?" Think about it. Why would God save America the way it is now? We're degraded. Why would God save the world the way it is now? Take away the idea that would suck for all of us, like the pain and suffering it would cause, right? All the trauma, all the difficulties, what the world would be like when we remove this demonic system. Because it always gets worse, right? I've talked about this when America engages in regime change. We know what happens when you destroy a government. As corrupt as the government is, you go to Libya recently, you go to Afghanistan, you go to, before that, Iran and these other countries, and then all the way back to, all the way Iraq and these other countries, then all the way back to Iran, when the CIA destroyed Mossadegh's government. And he wasn't even a bad guy, he was a good guy. And so, what happened to Iran after that? If you destroy a government as bad as it is, the what happens afterwards is even worse. But you take all that away. You take all the depravity away, all the stuff that could happen, that will happen to all of us afterwards. Why would God save, for God's purposes, why would God save America or the rest of the world? Why would he save it? What is there worth saving, right? Like, there's good things here, but the overall aspect of our system is each generation gets worse. Right, every generation is worse than the generation before. So I have a different perspective about that. And the Sajmark system, there was a plan that it was executed by the second master of the system. When divine beings do work for God. They, it's just a matter of using your thought force and your will force. There's certain spiritual points that are activated. But if God says destroy America, a saint doesn't have to go out there and make a war happen. They just have to have a thought. America is destroyed. If a saint is ordered to destroy Israel, they just have to make a thought that Israel will be destroyed and put their will to it, and it'll be destroyed, right? It's just that easy. Like, it's because God is ordering it, the power is there to do it, and you just execute the thought. You just, on planet Earth, you're there incarnated on planet Earth, so it's easier to do it from there. And so if some plan has to be adjusted, and there's destructive work or creative work that needs to be done, a saint just has to have a thought, a higher developed person that's closer proximity to God, and then it'll be done. So anything that needs to be done on God's behalf can be done anytime by anybody that works for God, and there's always somebody here, or the divine beings that oversee the planet that can make those things happen. So everything that's happening right now is permitted by God. Like I said, God doesn't have a mind, so it's not so much God as there's souls, higher developed souls, that oversee God's work and have a plan for America and the planet. I mean, there's no America in that sense. Countries don't matter and individual lives don't matter. It's whatever has to happen for people to evolve. And so there's a plan for that. And the plan involves the destruction of a demonic system and people lamenting and beseeching God for forgiveness. So that's the system I believe in. That is, part of the plan. That first the system has to come down, and then something better has to take its place, because people will realize how bad we fucked up, and will be finally willing to embrace their higher nature, and the conditions will be there to make that happen. And the information will be there like it always is. This idea of God, you're God's chosen people. God doesn't choose. God's already made his choice. God loves you, right? God is love. So God loves everything and everybody. God is the essence of love. So that's God's choice, right? What's your choice? How many people love God back? What does God, even the people who are religious, what do? They don't care about God until things go south for them. And they pray to God to fix something, or to make something not happen, or to reverse something that has happened, or help them change something for the better. They beg God for a better life. They don't go to God and say, God, give me, God, whatever your will, let it be, let thy will be done. And then accept what that means, right? Like, how many people would be on board if God said, yeah, I got to destroy the system? No, you don't, God. Come on, God. How many people would pray to God and say, please don't do that? If God, there's a voice of God came down immediately from, wherever God is, not heaven, but, the etheric world. God's everywhere, anywhere. God doesn't have to have, God isn't in a place. God's here right now. God is in everything and everybody and everything and everything in the world, everything in the universe. So if God said to you, all of a sudden everybody heard God's voice. Yeah, I got to destroy the system. Like, you heard God communicated to you, or the beings that are managing God's will on planet Earth said that to you. You'd be like, fucking God, no way, don't do that. Come on, bro. Come on, bro. We don't want that. There is accountability within the divine universe. So we don't have to worry about, like, as much as people want to, curse people here or hex people there or talk bad about people or complain, that there is accountability. As much as people want to see justice in America and justice in the world, everything is just. Eventually, whatever you do wrong, right, whatever you do in the universe comes back to you. The universe, that people talk about the universe. I'm waiting for the universe like it's a silly thing, but it's, whatever, the matrix of God's matrix, right? Everything's accounted for in the form of samskaras. Everything that you do, you have to pay for later. Every wrong thing you do. The only thing that you can really do is submit yourself to God's will, and then there's no consequences. You stop choosing the wrong thing, right? Like, this is a unique perspective that I have here. I mean, I don't know if other people say it, but I don't think they do, because it comes from the Sajmark system. You get to the point where every thought you have, like every action, like your mind doesn't wander. this guy Babaji, the second master of the Sajmark system, this is what he lived at. This is how he lived. Like everything that he did, every breath he took, when he drank water, he did it with God's permission. Whatever he did was, how does this, what I'm doing right now, serve God? Whatever I'm doing, how does what my choices, how does it serve God? Every bite he took, every he's eating food, he was thinking that this food he was eating came from God, so it was divine food, and it was making his physical system, it was divinizing his physical system. And so instead of eating food and thinking about the taste and enjoying it, he would eat the food with the idea that this food was divinizing him. Every activity that he was engaged in, he thought about how it would help God. Like whatever he did, how does this help me serve God? How does this make me into a better instrument to serve God? So there was no freedom of choice. There was no freedom to do the wrong thing. There's no freedom to fuck off and, indulge in human egotistical pursuits like everybody else does. No indulgence, no, I'm going to do this because my ego wants to do it, even though I know God doesn't want me to do it. I'm going to do it anyway. None of that shit, right? I'm even just in thought, not letting your mind wander and do things that are, go against God's will, right? That are every particle of your being, every little bit of energy, everything that you exists to serve God and make the right choices. And, people don't want to give up their freedom to make the wrong choice. Like that's what we've been given. And so there's consequences for that, right? You make the wrong choice. You make a choice, any other choice but the right choice, then there's consequences. And the right choice is always to serve God in some way, right? So I'm just saying all this because you understand that I have a bigger perspective than just the politics and whatever. Like there's God's will is going to be done, and we're in a time where the system is imploding of its own immorality, its own depravity, and there are agents that are bringing about God's will. And some of those agents have to be villains, right? Trump's a villain. Joe Biden was a villain. Kamala Harris was a villain. All these news media people are villains. There's villains here, villains there. Everybody participating in the ultimate collapse of our civilization that has to happen. Whatever that looks like, that there's, some understanding that this is our results of our collective actions of a demonic system that's taking us in the wrong direction. So, that's how I feel about these things. I mean, I believe that, as much as I could possibly believe it, right? With the idea that I have an ego and I am a person who is dependent on America just like the rest of us, right? So I have my personal preferences, I have my own inability to change and, not wanting to deal with like the stress of apocalypse. Like we all have that, right? So there's that. But in that, right, and the guy who's, when I started Sajmark years ago, I had these incredible first three initial meditations. You have these individual sittings, these meditations where a preceptor sits 5 feet away from you, you sit across from somebody. And they do cleaning work, they do deep cleaning work on your heart region, and then you're given your first transmission. But my first sitting, and I had meditated before, and I didn't like meditation. And my preceptor was a Jewish hippie named Fred. And, he was a catalyst for these sittings. And it was pouring outside, which I didn't know at the time was like rain was always an indication of like divine grace. We had these like biblical rains, and it was in Massachusetts. I lived in Northampton, Massachusetts. I lived in, like the liberal city of Northampton, Massachusetts. And, I went in to take these sittings. Not, I felt something big was going to happen, but I really didn't want to meditate. I tried meditating before, and I'm trying to meditate. And I had this experience as like a divine hand reached down and was pulling something, out of through my throat and out of my chest. It was like an etheric hand just reached in and was grabbing something. And for a minute there, I couldn't breathe. I thought I was going to die. And this is not what happens to other people. I don't know if anybody else had anything like this. This was like my St. Paul moment. And when something was pulled out of my system, I felt a lightness and a divinity and an experience. And I was like, I was in heaven. It was like this amazing fucking experience. Like it was an undeniable experience of God that I had. And then all three of the sittings. And the last sitting, I just laughed. It was like this deep, divine laugh was coming out of me. I had this experience that everything in the material world was an illusion. It was meaningless. And that the real reason we're here was this divine feeling. And it was like a joke. Like all the shit that people are doing, all the fucking bullshit that people are engaged in is just just an illusion. And the real reason we're here is simply inside us all along. And I was just like, and, I thought everyone else had these experiences, but Fred was like, he saw what happened, and he was kind of stunned by what was happening because he had given, he had started so many people who were prominent people. He was a great preceptor, and he just, had all these people. He was a weird guy, and he had his, family or whatever, but, somebody who was, for me, he was, one of my 5 favorite people, like just one of those people that was instrumental in my existence in various ways, right? My transformation. And I was always loyal to, just Fred's my guy, right? He's one of my people. And I just don't have that. Like, I just don't, connect with people, but he was there for a key thing that happened to me. And as I later realized, Sajmarg is a subtle practice. But I had this undeniable, interaction with God, experience of God that, has left me with, everything's a blessing and a curse, and it's a blessing because, like, I know, like, it's there. Like, I know that God is it's not like some book I read or some, indoctrinated system that, I had this experience. And I've had, numerous experiences since then that have given me undeniable proof that God exists and that the Sajmarg system is an incredible system that helps people connect to God in this way. Like I know those things because I've experienced them, right? So I just want to say, like, that's my perspective on these things, right? This idea of hatred is, what hatred does to people internally and their spiritual condition. And, these guys, as big as prick as they are, they're bringing down the end of America and the world, and that's just what has to happen. I have that, coming from a higher place. But on just a human level, for Netanyahu to come in here and say to a foreign country that is bankrolling you, right? I mean, that, is you're parasiting off of, and to say, we're going to take your money and then take your taxpayer dollars and do nothing in return and otherwise call you crazy and gaslight you and censor you and deplatform you if you dare to criticize Israel. It's a fucked up thing. So on a human level, there has to be a reaction to that. Like, there just has to. Like, whether this is staged, like, there's the divine staging of something, or they're trying to, this whole Charlie Kirk thing and this thing with Netanyahu, and maybe they want you to hate Israel, whatever it is, right? Whatever the outcome is, whatever the reason they're doing it, the people that control the system, and, the people who control the system, they can be eradicated with a mere thought. A higher developed soul can just say, they're gone. That's it. That's all for you guys. And then they're just, the whole thing can collapse. Any government, any group of people, any shadow government, these people don't have the kind of control that people think they do, right? In some ways they're holding the earth hostage, but it's still being permitted by God because it can be, at any time that can be stopped, right? But, just in terms of the human reaction, he's saying things that are, that they're evil shit he's saying, right? What he's doing is evil shit. All right, so let's go to this other voiceover where I read the comments, and then I'll cover a few more other things on the other side. Okay, just one more thing before I get into the comments and voiceover from last night. And, this is how this channel is dealing with interactions with people from the Christian faith, the Christian community. And so, again, I talked about this a couple times recently, that I had one dream with Jesus in it, and it was unsolicited. Like, I wasn't, I didn't consciously think about this. I don't think I consciously thought about it before I had the dream. But in the Sajmarg system, the second master of the system, Babaji, intercommuned with Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, Krishna, and then a host of other people, Swami Vivekananda and some of these people who were, great spiritual beings, and some people that nobody ever heard of, but they had significant lives on planet Earth. They're not part of the known history, right? And, all these souls are either working with or have blessed the Sajmark system because they are all working for the same thing, which is the upliftment of humanity to a divine place. Buddhism is a little bit different, which I'm not going to get into here, the Buddhist perspective. But Babaji intercommuned with Jesus and asked him, I have all these Christians coming to me. Am I permitted to work on them? And Jesus said, yes, I want this. And he is part of the Sajmark system. He's in charge of one of the spiritual points. The second point, which is the Atma chakra, I believe it's called. The soul point. And so, I had this dream in which Jesus was sitting down. I walked up to him and I said, there's lots of Christians coming to my channel. At that time, there's Christians coming to my channel and they were saying things and I knew things that they didn't know about Christianity that I knew were correct. Just from my, all of the stuff I say here, right? And I say, do I have permission to talk about the things I know about Christianity? He said, why do you think I'm sending them to you, right? That he said he was sending Christians to my channel to hear my perspective because Jesus knows that the Bible is bullshit, right? He knows that they've hijacked his message. Like, you think he doesn't know, right? He knows that Christianity isn't what he intended it to be, that they've taken the people, the money people, the people that Jesus was against have taken his movement in another direction. And, and the stuff that I know, he knows. And for some of you guys who are praying to him, he's sending you here, like some of the Christians. And so that's my perspective, that I'm here to tell you the stuff that you necessarily don't want to hear, wouldn't believe. But the majority of Christians, if they met Jesus, they wouldn't believe he was Jesus and they would probably kill him again. Right? Like if Jesus showed up just like he did years ago, first of all, he wouldn't look like people think he looked, and he wouldn't act the way that they think he acts. He wouldn't play the role that the Bible, and he would be confronting all these mega churches and all these fake Christians, and they would all fucking hate him because they don't really want the real Jesus, just like they don't want the real God. And it's not just them, it's everybody. People don't really want connection with God because they're scared of what God would tell them, because they know that, that what they're doing is bullshit, but they don't want, on some level, but don't want to hear it from God directly. They want to make up their own personal Jesus, right? So that's, the beauty of that song. So that's something for people to understand my perspective, that I believe that, that Jesus is, in terms of my interaction, in the Sajmark system, if you dream about one of the spiritual masters, it's that master communicating to you in a dream. And sometimes it's not clear what the communication is, but I've had a number of dreams with the various masters of the system in it, and I have, had dreams with other saints and souls and whatever it is. I've had these dreams, and this one with Jesus was very specific, and, I had it and I woke up like fresh. It was fresh in my mind. And I was like, all right, so I guess they want me to talk about Christianity. Because I didn't have to do it. I don't care to do it. I didn't want to bring that on myself. And I knew it was going to hurt my viewership. I knew that if I kept my mouth shut about what I knew about Christianity, I'd have a lot more Christian viewers. But, orders are orders. Anyways, here it is. My voiceover from yesterday. Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. Today is still Wednesday, October 1st. I'm going to read, I think, 3 comments. 2 of them are short, but one is about, a longtime viewer who's believing that, like, I have something against Christians or have a negative opinion about Christians, and I want to dispel that because it's not really a me problem. I'll get to that in a moment. But there is, people just don't like Erica Kirk, which, should be fairly obvious. Well, I guess there's 5 comments here. And so I think 2 of them are, here is the first one. This one is, you were wrong to believe that Charlie Kirk's failed to see Jesus would be called a terrorist by Bibi. You were wrong to believe that Kirk abiding by the Shabbat and other things makes him a Jew. Like, I don't say that he was. I don't remember saying that. I was saying that he's practicing Israeli stuff, right? When I was a kid, my dad had 2 friends in college. My dad was, a Sicilian, very Italian looking. In the 1920s or 30s, whenever he went to college, way back when. He went to Rutgers University, and people were prejudiced against Italians and Jews. So my dad had 2 Jewish friends, and he liked, Jewish humor, like the vaudeville, like that was the original sort of stand-up comedy. I mean, he had all these things, there were some things in common there. And Hal Wurtenberg and Bob Satter, who I assume are all dead now. And my mom was somewhere traveling, vacation or something, traveling to be with her parents in Florida. And my dad and I were alone, and we went over to dinner at the Satter's house. And then at some point, we went over there for Passover or something. And I had Jewish friends I ate matzah balls and shit. Whatever it was, right? There were a lot of Jewish people that were around my area. So my best friends when I was a kid were Jewish, right? So, I don't care about any of this stuff, which I'll get into later. Like, I don't look at it like other people look at it. It's not really a thing it means nothing to me. Like people saying their religion, this religion, because most people don't even practice their religion. The bigger problem for Charlie is that he was on board with a genocide that was happening to the Palestinian people. And, he was taking money from pro-Israeli lobbyist people who started to pull their money as soon as he got critical of them. And so his politics and lying to these people, gaslighting these kids, I mean, there was a conflict of interest there. Like they would accuse him of taking money. He's like, no, I'm not taking money from Israel. Yeah, you are. Come on. That's being a lying sack of shit, right? And that should bother everybody. Christ practiced all of the commandments that are in the Torah. He came to rebuke what the scribes and Pharisees added onto the law with their Talmudic teachings. He rightly interpreted the Torah. He didn't do away with it. Anyone who has looked deeper into these things easily recognizes this. Jesus' best, whatever he did that was best was breaking away from his faith, his religion, and not faith, but religion, and becoming a spiritual person. And so, that's why he was killed, and that's why the Pharisees were killing him. I don't believe Jesus really practiced much of his religion as people think he did. Whatever they say in the Bible isn't the same thing. Regarding a personal relationship with God, it's called prospective Christian monasticism. When the patriarchs put out the religion above theosis. A great film about this is called Man of God, the story of S.I. Nectarines of Argene. I got to make this bigger. I'm having trouble reading this thing. Nectarios of Agenia. You don't have to check it out. I don't, thanks. Not here to debate, but I've listened to you for a while, and then this is along the lines of what I think you were talking about. Much respect, Vin Diesel. I think he's calling me Vin Diesel, which is weird. But anyways, yeah, there's always people who do spirituality, people who want more than when their religion is willing to give them. And so, I'll talk about that more as we get to this other comment. This person writes, let me get it, pull it up here. There it is. Apparently, Charlie Kirk threw out MAGA hats at his rallies. He seemed to throw out the 47 hats. He and Erica sold their Arizona house for $5.25 million in January. They bought it for they bought it in 2023 for $4.75 million. No info on where they're living after January. Did they sell because of financial reasons? No, they didn't have financial reasons to sell. So I went to verify this on Gemini. I'm not really using ChatGPT because it gets a lot of things wrong. I think it's glitching out, which would be kind of hilarious. Charlie Kirk listed his Scottsdale, Arizona mansion for $6.495 million, or $6.5 million in March of 2024. He later accepted an offer for the home for $5.25 million. The property had changed hands in June when he paid June of 2023, $4.75 million. So he was living in a $5 million house, right? close to 6 million. I mean, depending on how you value it. So, like, that's crazy, that this is the kind of money he had. Based on the multiple reports at the time, Charlie Kirk's estimated worth was around $12 million. I think that's low for, what his business is worth, right? Nonprofit leadership reported to climb from $400,000 a year. He started off taking $27,000 a year in 2016 and $400,000 in 2021. He had real estate investments, his Arizona home, which they valued at $4.75 million, and an oceanfront condo in Florida valued at $800,000. Media ventures, he earned income from popular podcasts and radio program. The Charlie Kirk Show was reported to charge as high as $50,000 to $100,000 per public speaking event. And so he was, they say $12 million, but there's more coming in. And that's a lot, right? I mean, this was a very profitable business, and he was selling bullshit. Like he was an Israeli shill. He was taking the shekels, in more way than one. He got sheckled. And so, like, that's important to know here, because this is something that plagues these high-profile Christians. There's con men in every religion around the world. And this kind of funny comment here. So this is, the person said, breaking news, new album by Erica and the Grifters. I guess I said Erica and the Grifters as a band in my video. This is, whatever it is. Featured his new hits such as Charlie in the Mirror, No Tears for Charlie, More Diamonds for Erica, Zionist Mane for TP USA, Candace, Shut Up Now, Gimme, 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 Blood on My Diamonds, My Wife Took My Life. And many more. Get your today that come to TP USA for small donation of $5,000. Please, if you email, your donation exceeds $100,000. So that's all that. But here's a comment I want to get to here about me not liking Christians. So this is from poor Erica. She's going through the 5 stages of grift. I used to listen to you every day a few years ago. I don't know if you recognize me, but I would get so excited when you hearted my comments. This is not a hostile comment. You don't have to call me a dumb fuck or ban me. I don't have to call anybody a dumb fuck or ban. It's not a mandatory thing. It's totally based on my choice, right? And this is probably poorly worded. I started to listen to you again when I saw how fake the Charlie Kirk thing was. I know you don't care or want my advice. I'm just giving you feedback in the sense that I feel like I know you in a way. I get there are a lot of fake Christians out there, but there are those who know the Lord. I'm trying to word this carefully without getting banned or insulted. I like you, Paul. Just know that not all believers in Christ are morons. So I don't know why anybody would think that I would say that, right? So this is a 2-part response. I'm not going to ban this person. The comment was not offensive at all. And, it's the problem when I do these comment videos, it makes people very apprehensive that I, will somehow turn on them. And when I do these things, it's in a light way, right? So there's a deeper response to this, like I said. Let me go with the less deep response. Well, the first response that I have is going to be about why I focus, like I'm focused on Charlie Kirk now, Trump before, Biden before, why I focus on people. And the second response is going to be about it's Christians who are the ones that are isolationist, right? When you call yourself a Christian and you buy into the bullshit, some of the bullshit teachings, you become an isolationist from everyone else. Okay, so I had to take a break. It's been a few hours, made dinner, and now I'm getting a chance to finish this thing up. So continuing from where I left off, the first piece to this is that when I cover what's going on, the apocalypse, there's a degradation that's happened in the modern day era where we became less than, right? Where people, our technology has accelerated our technological lives, our comforts, but our characters, our relationship with God, our relationship with nature, our common sense, our just being functional people has suffered. And that's one of the things I cover here, because I contrast what happens when you have a relationship with God internally with what we're doing now, right? It's it's probably the core of my show here, what I present on a daily basis. It appears that I'm just in ways mocking it, which I am, and degrading and blaming, which, it kind of comes off that way, but it's really covering the outcome of what happens when you have the kind of system we have, when you go against God's will, and you have an ego-based system that's out of balance of material pleasures and all the things that we have in our society. And stupidity sets in. And so when Biden was president, I was covering Biden's censorship. I was covering how the guy was obviously senile, and the mainstream media and the Biden people covered it up, said he was a great man and a great president when he was anything but. And so, right-wing people liked my show then because I was saying things that they agree with, but they couldn't see that in themselves with Trump. I told everybody that this thing with Trump and the lawsuits and the criminal charges was all bullshit, and call me when he goes to jail, because otherwise he's going to get a second term. I said they're not going to get rid of Trump, because everything that we've had in the last now 10 years has been all about Trump. When Trump first came on the political scene and gained popularity in 2015 and 16, all the way through the Biden administration and now, all the way up to now, it's been all about Trump. And they, their Democrats don't have a platform. Their platform is, at least we're not Trump. And the mainstream liberal media, their whole focus is on Trump, even when Biden was president. And I said, they don't have a second act. What are they going to do without Trump? Like, Trump gives them everything that they want, plus he's doing the controller's bidding and, all these things. And so, when I talk about the dumb fuck Republicans, the dumb fuck Christians, or the dumb fuck liberals, it's when you willfully, you can see the truth, but you willfully deny it because you're desperate, because you have to have hope in something. You can't admit that the system's collapsing around you. And so you have to have some pie-in-the-sky hope or whatever it is. And you see this now with the Christian stuff with Charlie Kirk and his wife, and the WWE stupidity. People are just degraded and stupid and want to be lied to and want to be faked and, want to go back into the Matrix like that one character, Cypher. Don't want to see reality and truth. They don't want to deal with the stuff that, that they're attached to. Like, everybody is attached to something. And like I've said, before, and maybe this video or my last video, I had to deal with this with my spiritual organization, and I dealt with it appropriately, right? Like, I'm one of the few people that saw the truth and accepted it, as painful as it was. There's lots of what I consider saintly people. I mean, higher developed spiritual beings that that have lived spiritual past lives, people who are better at the meditation and, kinder and more motivated and more service-oriented towards God. I mean, wonderful people that do the meditation. There's people like that, not on that level in terms of their spirituality, but in terms of their commitment. In every religious organization, there's just great people. In every spiritual movement and organization, there's great people, right? It's just a matter of the method in which you connect to God. And I feel blessed because the Sajmark system has a method that, doesn't exist anywhere else with the transmission and the cleaning. There's lots of people who are really devoted to God, and then that's what they do on their end. But what is their system they're using? And each system has two things: spiritual condition and spiritual approach. Spiritual condition is your spiritual condition, like how you are, how clean you are spiritually. And there's been cultures that people were very clean spiritually. A lot of these Aboriginal cultures, very clean, very pure, not complex, not, honest, simple people, simple, types of people, farmers and village people, good spiritual condition, salt of the earth, good character qualities, not, manipulative and greedy and, working to be good people. And they have a good spiritual condition. Spiritual approach is how far along you are on your spiritual journey. and how close you are to God. And there's lots of various practices that lead to good spiritual condition. So you see somebody being a good godly person, but they don't have a good spiritual approach. And the Sajmark system has, a shortcut way of bringing people down their spiritual path, an accelerated way. It's more of like a Hail Mary that was there so that people could reach high levels of spirituality in a short time, because we just weren't progressing as a people. There's lots of people that, not lots of people, there are some people who have good spiritual condition, but nobody has a very deep spiritual approach because they just don't have access to it, right? Because they don't have a method for it. There's no method to what they're doing. There's no, there's no spiritual energy behind them pushing them up to higher levels. And so throughout the history of spirituality, there's a method that goes with some of these different practices, and some are better than others. And I believe the Sajmark system, the system I do, is the best, right? And why wouldn't I want the best? Why wouldn't anybody want the best? But despite it being the best, that doesn't mean people rose up to it. And so when this failure Daji took over, right? And he has a hard job. Like, I couldn't do that job. Like, I didn't even consider myself as a possible candidate for that job, right? And so I would give him a little bit of a pass, but he's failed so epically. Like, he's done shit that I would never do. Like, I would have failed, but I would have failed better. Like, it's like one of those things where he's failed so epically. And the people that are there, some of these great souls, I mean, really wonderful people, really very spiritually advanced people, but they weren't able to deal with it. They weren't able to deal with it effectively. And I don't know what went on with each person, but I do know overall they just haven't been able to figure this thing out. And, it's limited because the guy has legally been appointed the president of the organization, and there's no way to get him out of there. But, his kids and him, he had 7 pharmacies in New York, so he lived in America. His kids were born in America. He's from India, but born in America. And he had 7 pharmacies, and during COVID, they made this kind of a good business venture to put together a pharmacy called Medley Pharmacy. And they were going to deliver pharmaceutical goods. I'm not a pharmacological person. I don't take pharmaceutical meds unless I really have to. Antibiotics occasionally. I mean, I just took some because of a possible tooth infection, but I hadn't taken any in about 7 or 8 years, at least, right? But, they had this pharmacy idea, and they inflated the books. His son inflated the books, and they got $170 million of investor money, and now they're under investigation by the SEC indictment, although they've absconded with the money to India. I mean, shit like that, like just epically fucking corrupt failures, just running scams, employing thugs, I mean, just racist stuff, I mean, just all the things that the Sajmark system never was and never should be, right? And so I don't have respect for those people that have allowed this to happen and have kept their mouths shut and won't stand up for it for whatever bullshit reason, whatever cowardly reason. There are people out there calling for my assassination, right? And so this is my people. This is my organization. This is the thing I love to do. This is the thing that's transformed my life. And I accepted that it had gone south, right? I mean, it was painful for me, but it was the truth, and I was able to accept it. And so if I'm able to do that, and I'm able to do that with our country and our everything else, and there's nothing special about me, I mean, other than, I've always had a tendency to want to be honest in these things, right? I mean, it's hard to be completely honest because, sometimes we don't even know that we're deceiving ourselves or whatever it is. But, if I can do it, other people can do it, right? It's a matter of choice, and it's a matter of willing to, suffer the painful realizations that are there for you to suffer, right? And the other thing is, when I do dumb things, I've gotten better at it. I've matured. I've learned to slow down. I was often in a rush. People think I talk really slowly, but I'm a fast-thinking, fast-moving person. When I hit a nail, I swing for the fences. My wife talks about, when I'm putting in a screw or, I just go for it. And, like whatever it is, like when I'm building something and, I don't expect to miss, these things. And I do things like that. Sometimes I'm a bull in a china shop and I leave messes behind and, have to slow. But I've learned to slow down and be more careful. But every once in a while, I do something really dumb, really stupid. And I'm like, that was a dumb fuck thing to do, right? And I recognize when I was young, I did a lot of dumb fuck things. So, I've been dumb when I was, and I still do dumb things. Like, I was using the chainsaw to clear out around the pawpaw trees today. But a couple weeks ago, we had another set of pawpaw trees. And we have a lot of these mulberry trees, which are great, but we have too many of them. Or they were shading the pawpaw trees. And I went to cut the mulberry tree, and I was wearing goggles, and I found a good angle, but I didn't look up, and I cut down one of the small pawpaw trees. And it's got a deep taproot, so it'll come back. But I was really bummed at myself. I mean, it's just really, just like it's fucked up. Like when you make a mistake and you do something that, that you wish you could take back or whatever. And especially when it's just dumb. Like it's just, didn't have to happen. And so, I consider myself a dumb fuck at times. And so then when I say things like that, isn't anything I don't think about myself or say to myself when I do something stupid, right? But in all that, to get back to the most important part about this person's comment, right? The problem that this person is expressing, the worry that that I judge Christians, and I don't. There's plenty of good Christians out there, plenty of salt of the earth, good people in every religion. And there's people like me in every religion, and people who are atheists like me. It's a certain personality type, a certain type of way of seeing the world. People who are, part of my tribe, part of my, whatever connection we have. And that's who I make videos for. It's not, I don't have a specific demographic, racial demographic, age, and these things. It's people who, resonate with the energy and the information I put up here, right? But in terms of the stuff with Christians, the big flaw in the Christian ideology is that the belief that there's only one way to get to heaven, which is, the John 3:16 stuff. And that's just complete bullshit, right? My mom, we were traveling to Ottawa, Canada. I think I've told this story recently. I was like 12, 13 years old. And my mom really liked the Native American people there. They had I got her a little doll, as a present. Like it was like a little Native American. I don't know why, but she loved the thing. Like she's an old, she's like in her 50s or 60s, but but it had, they wore this fur. It was cold up there in Canada, and we were at some kind of living history museum, and these Native American Ottawa Indians, Native peoples, were doing some dancing, and they had this kind of purity to them. I mean, I kind of barely noticed it. And my mom was like, almost like in tears. She just loved it so much. And she was like, I can't believe that these people would go to hell. I just don't believe it. I don't believe these people are going to hell. I'm like, fucking of course they're not. Why would you think they're going to hell? Like I had no idea about the bullshit John 3:16. But my mom recognized that, that was bullshit, right? She recognized, even though she was a very devout Catholic, read the Bible, had prayer meetings at her house, taught catechism, went to church sometimes 2 times a week, sometimes would go to morning mass during the week. She did the meditation with me and my brother. She went to meet the master of the system and had like a wonderful introduction with him. She was really into spirituality and God. But she realized, that was bullshit. Like that wasn't true. That there were other people out there that clearly weren't going to hell. And that was some kind of, she probably didn't realize it was a manipulation, but it is. And so when you believe that everyone else but you is going to hell, your thing, and there's so many shitty Christians and so many, there's just so much bullshit in the Christian religion. But when you believe that, then you think you're desperately trying to save people, and then you get into that missionary bullshit where they would take liberties and take advantage and sexually assault native peoples and beat them up and, take kids and indoctrinate them into Christianity because they're saving these fucking heathens and that bullshit that happened, right? And it's not fucking true. And so it's offensive to the rest of us. And if you think I'm going to hell, then, I don't want you here, right? It's not about you being a Christian. It's about you not seeing through your own prejudice because, your belief system's fucked. There's a lot of fucked up things in the manipulative things in your religion, but there has been lots of spiritual movements, valid spiritual movements throughout the history of humanity. And there's lots of systems better systems at helping people connect to the divinity within them. And your system isn't that, right? Your method, there's no method in what you're doing. It's just accepting Jesus. And, people do different things. And there has been some great Christian saints, but those people can see spirituality and God in other people who do other things, even atheists who have a soul. And so, it's this belief that everyone else is going to hell. It's insulting, and it's not true, and it creates a false barrier between you and other people and puts you on a pedestal you don't belong to, because there's lots of shitty people that are called Abhyasis, lots of shitty ones that do my Sajmark practice. People I have no respect for, people who did some fucked up things, right, that I know about, just like I know about fucked up Christians, I know about the pedophile priests and all these people. You think those pedophile priests, because they accept Lord Jesus as their Lord and Savior, are going to heaven? You think they're going to fucking heaven, those guys? Whereas really good people doing something else aren't? Like, it's just fucked. And so, you have to go beyond your limitations and your indoctrination. And it's like my mom, see what's there. You have to be able to look at people and go, that person's a really spiritual person, and they aren't doing my thing. Because, like I said, we get lucky with the method that we use. I got lucky to find Sajmark. I'm extremely lucky. I feel like I didn't necessarily deserve it, at least in this life. But, I got lucky. It's a great method. But whatever the method that you're using, whether a system that you're using, whether the people you meet up to in life, and you're fortunate enough to meet godly people that help you and help further your spiritual pursuit, that's just what the hand that you're dealt. But what you do with that hand, the kind of person you are, the person that takes advantage of the opportunities that are there, that's on you, right? And your ability to see things truthfully and pursue life in that way, and being able to face the truth is something that everyone has to aspire to. And, you can't let your indoctrination limit that. And I don't give a shit what you do, but it's offensive to the rest of us. Like, that's all I say, is keep that shit to yourself, right? I don't want to hear about how we're going to fucking hell. Like, I don't believe it, and you don't really believe it either. It's just some bullshit thing that you've been told and you haven't had the courage to confront, because it would mean that you're lied to about things that you are attached to that you don't want to face up to. So anyways, that's my thing here. Let's move on to the video clips. Okay, so this is my original video entitled Land Grab that I made when this stuff started to happen between Israel and the Gaza Strip. And RFK Jr., who has been pretty brilliant and pretty, good as a truther, interviewed with this guy, Rabbi Shmuley, who has a daughter who sells kosher dildos. No, literally, you can look it up. And she sells kosher dildos. And, RFK Jr., who had said that COVID specifically didn't target Ashkenazi Jews and one other group, that COVID was, there's certain genetics, and he got railed by the Congress, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, among all their person, for saying this. And then he had to go on this show and bow and taint kiss this creepy this guy. This is one of the worst rabbis ever. But, like the whole thing. But, he didn't want to be a crazy, an insane Nazi, so he did this. And know whatever they have on him and whatever they, promised him or not, I don't know what it is, right? But, this is where we're at right now. I had a bunch of other clips I was going to show you that were about other things, but this video is already 2 hours long. So I'm going to wrap this one up here. There's another day. Tomorrow's another day. But this is the first time they're just coming out with it. Trump with martial law, and Netanyahu was like, yeah, we totally own your social media, and we're going to order these people, give them a playbook, and order these kids and pay them and to shill for us. And, anybody who's against us is a insane Nazi, and we're going to deplatform them and shut them down and shut them up. It's like, it's that fucking bad. Like, he just came in and said that. We're going to buy up these social media platforms. We know that, he says he's got Elon Musk in his back pocket. He's going to talk to Elon. And, Elon's been about this anyway. And so now he has TikTok. And so what's left is YouTube, which has always been very susceptible. I know they've just settled the lawsuit with Trump. And so, they're going to start censoring the shit out of all this stuff, right? I mean, all these videos will be taken down. It'll be this whole thing. And, like this is what's happening. A foreign government and, an unowned president are all working together to, destroy what's, left of America, God's will or not. They're not doing it for that reason. And so, that's what's happening. Like you see it. They're admitting to it. They're not hiding it. It's right there in front of everybody. Okay. Just one more thing before I get into the comments and voiceover from last night. And, this is how this channel is dealing with interactions with people from the Christian faith, the Christian community. And so, again, I talked about this a couple times recently. That I had one dream with Jesus in it, and it was unsolicited. Like I wasn't, I didn't consciously think about this. I mean, I don't think I consciously thought about it before I had the dream. But in the Sajmark system, the second master of the system, Babaji, intercommuned with Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, Krishna, and then a host of other people, Swami Vivekananda and some of these people who were, great spiritual beings, and some people that nobody ever heard of, but they had significant lives on planet Earth. They're not part of the known history, right? And, all these souls are either working with or have blessed the Sajmark system because they are all working for the same thing, which is the upliftment of humanity to a divine place. Buddhism is a little bit different, which I'm not going to get into here, the Buddhist perspective. But Babaji intercommuned with Jesus and asked him, I have all these Christians coming to me. Am I permitted to work on them? And Jesus said, yes, I want this. And he is part of the Sajmark system. He's in charge of one of the spiritual points. The second point, which is the Atma chakra, I believe it's called. The soul point. And so, I had this dream in which Jesus was sitting down. I walked up to him and I said, there's lots of Christians coming to my channel. At that time, there's Christians coming to my channel and they were saying things and I knew things that they didn't know about Christianity that I knew were correct. Just from my, all of the stuff I say here, right? And I say, do I have permission to talk about the things I know about Christianity? He said, why do you think I'm sending them to you, right? That he said he was sending Christians to my channel to hear my perspective because Jesus knows that the Bible is bullshit, right? He knows that they've hijacked his message. Like, you think he doesn't know, right? He knows that Christianity isn't what he intended it to be. That they've taken the people, the money people, the people that Jesus was against have taken his movement in another direction. And, and the stuff that I know, he knows. And for some of you guys who are praying to him, he's sending you here, like some of the Christians. And so that's my perspective, that I'm here to tell you the stuff that you necessarily don't want to hear, wouldn't believe. But the majority of Christians, if they met Jesus, they wouldn't believe he was Jesus, and they would probably kill him again. Like if Jesus showed up just like he did years ago, first of all, he wouldn't look like people think he looked, and he wouldn't act the way that they think he acts. He wouldn't play the role that the Bible, and he would be confronting all these mega churches and all these fake Christians, and they would all fucking hate him because they don't really want the real Jesus, just like they don't want the real God. And it's not just them, it's everybody. People don't really want connection with God because they're scared of what God would tell them, because they know that, that what they're doing is bullshit, but they don't want, on some level, but don't want to hear it from God directly. They want to make up their own personal Jesus, right? So that's, the beauty of that song. So that's something for people to understand my perspective, that I believe that, that Jesus is, in terms of my interaction, in the Sajmark system, if you dream about one of the spiritual masters, it's that master communicating to you in a dream. And sometimes it's not clear what the communication is, but I've had a number of dreams with the various masters of the system in it. And I have, had dreams with other saints and souls and whatever it is. I've had these dreams, and this one with Jesus was very specific. And, I had it and I woke up like fresh. It was fresh in my mind. And I was like, all right, so I guess they want me to talk about Christianity. Because I didn't have to do it. I don't care to do it. I didn't want to bring that on myself. And I knew it was going to hurt my viewership. I knew that if I kept my mouth shut about what I knew about Christianity, I'd have a lot more Christian viewers. But, orders are orders. Anyways, here it is. My voiceover from yesterday.